So we back, Mitchell Port and Leash podcast, and my guest, I found out his birthday is next week. Mine just passed. He's a fellow Pisces. Brian Franklin, welcome to the Mitchell Port and Leash podcast, my friend.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, let's get into the conversation because there's a lot you do when it comes down to marriage, and things like that. So give us a little bio of what it is you do and all that great stuff.
Well, the main thing that we do is that we help people with their wedding vows, their wedding speeches, and when they're having a friend or a family member officiate, we help them with their wedding ceremony script. So a lot of people that are tasked with that don't really know how to write an 8 to 10 minute narrative of their love story and make it have all of the fun stuff in it, and make sure that it's got the prerequisites. And in many states, some people have to actually say "I do." There's a lot of things that can go wrong or go missing, so we make sure those are in there. But mainly through an interview process, we're helping people find words. Not everybody's a great writer. Even great writers struggle in these kinds of emotionally powerful and high pressure moments. And then we also help them with the delivery coaching. So once they have copy that they love, we help them learn how to deliver it even better.
I love
So
that. I love
that's
that.
basically what we do. But of course, as part of that, I've interviewed hundreds of couples and wedding party speakers. Their fathers, their mothers, their best friends and brothers and sisters, and we've learned quite a bit about what makes a relationship tick, at least at that stage. But also, for the people that are giving speeches, they often have a perspective on marriage. So I've heard a lot of stuff over the years.
Oh, here we go. Let's go. See, this is my wheelhouse. I like asking the questions and then see what we uncover. So,
Sure.
marriage. We talk about this marriage conversation, right? And
Yes.
I'm not married, you know what I mean, and things
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like? Because the studies are showing that a lot of people don't want to get married. What's coming up for you when you see these groups and individuals coming in, and what's separating them from wanting to get married from the ones that are like, yo, marriage is not for me. I got to pay too much in divorce. Let's talk about it.
Well, of course, there's an economic aspect. There are people that just say, I don't want to have the government involved in my relationship. There's no need for it, whatever. My attitude towards that is, of course, if you don't want to get married, then you shouldn't, right? If that's not a thing for you and you really don't want to, then you shouldn't. If you don't care and your partner does, then that's up to you as to whether or not you want to make that kind of legal and financial commitment. But what's driving the trend? That's a really good question. I think there's a increased number of people that are in the workplace that they want their careers are going. They're hustling, and you have to, as we all know, we have to hustle harder now than ever. It's the economy is created an environment where you can't just normally live off of one income that easily unless you're really lucky. So I think that's driving a delay in marriage at the very least. So, and also, people with in vitro and that kind of thing can push off having kids later and later than, certainly than they were traditionally 10, 15 years ago.
No, that's so true. And I feel like the ebbs and flows of a lot that's going on. I talk about dating relationships here on the podcast, and I think I do it from a wholesome perspective, not this
Hmm.
clickbait stuff, trying to get the virality and things like that. Men are this, women are this. But from a biology standpoint, because there's a lot of just things that men have to do and that women have to do as well, to be able to simply sit here and be like, yo, let me put the ring on her finger, or
Hmm.
whatever your sexual preference is of what you want to date. You get what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think that
Sure.
when you start playing with rings, I like to say the championship hardware, in my point of view, it becomes, you also have to understand those vows, and we're going to tie it back into what it is you do, but
Hmm.
it's a level of seriousness that happens because now there's
Oh, I
consequences for your actions. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I know in my own marriage, or when I got engaged, I didn't think it would feel any different. I mean, we had been doing what we were doing for a long period of time. And then, like what was really going to change when we got married. But there was something different about it when we did get engaged. I felt different about the word fiance. I felt different about the commitment that we were making to each other, even though that commitment was already on both practically on paper, or if it wasn't on paper, it was basically our lives were intertwined enough to where that was already happening. So I don't know. For me, it was different, but I've also talked to couples and asked them this question, and they're like, no, I didn't really feel that different. It was just like we got excited about planning the wedding.
No, I love that. So let's get into it because, not everyone can get up on a stage, have fancy mics
Sure.
like what we have
Yeah.
headphones, do all that other stuff. How do you nail your wedding vow the right way so you're not up there making a fool of yourself? Let's really talk about it.
Okay. Well, I think the first thing is you really should try to get, whether you can do it yourself or you need help, you need to get to why you love the other person and be as specific as you can. It's not just I love you to the moon and stars kind of stuff. You need to identify what they do, what you've done together, those little moments that matter, those habits that matter, the things that you look forward to every day or every weekend, or the things that amuse you. And when you put those things on paper in the right way, then you can feel really good about what you're saying because it's yours. It's not generic. You're not going to look foolish. You're giving life to this thing. The vows are really a declaration of love. It's a public declaration of love. And it's done, if it's done in the right way, the entire audience is going to get invested in the rest of the event. And they're going to learn things about you that they probably didn't know before the vows started. So I think the key to doing this, again, specificity, originality, having, what we do by interviewing people, we interview them for an hour. We get into all types of stuff. And so that exposes things that they hadn't thought about in a long time, or they hadn't thought about it ever, really. But they then are forced to articulate it at some level, and then we help them put it together in an artful and hopefully fun and moving way.
When you do
That's one
these
part of it, by
interviews,
the way. That the other part
no,
is practicing. Yeah,
yeah, of course, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
when you do these interviews and then everything is going through and the day comes and the big shebang is there and the mic, you have to hold that mic or if it's positioned
yeah.
where it needs to be positioned.
Hmm.
Speak on a horror story that you've seen and how did they overcome
Well,
it?
the funny thing is because ours is a remote service and our clients are all over the country and even internationally. I don't go to many weddings, right? I mean,
Really?
I go, yeah. I mean, I'm giving them the tools, and then they have their weddings. I mean, I would love it. There's a wedding down in Laguna Beach coming up. I'd love to go to it, but if they invite me, I would. But really, I'm there to just help enable them. And so I don't see a lot of these things, but I have heard some disaster stories, particularly when it gets to wedding speeches. But even at the vows, people are making mistakes like one person will talk for 2 or 3 minutes and then the other person will talk for 30 seconds, right? And it shows whether there's no imbalance in the way they feel. They just look like they're imbalanced. They sound like they're imbalanced. And it's like, oh, you didn't put the time into this? Come on, right? And it automatically, you look at it and go, come on, dude, or whatever it is. And then the other thing is you can go really long and make mistakes where you're just boring the tears out of your audience, and they just want to go to cocktail hour. They're getting baked in the sun right now. They're wearing suits and long dresses
them,
sometimes.
them
So
dreaded outdoor weddings, my friend. Trust me, in the
yeah,
summertime.
yeah, you've created this beautiful environment, but it's a little humid that day, and some of these people are wearing vests, and your poor groomsmen might have been out last night because they were the ones partying, and I did watch like a groomsman like totally pass out one time at a wedding, just like he just
Right?
melted. It was
Right?
great, but
No, I'll
then
say this. I'll say this real quick. I remember one outdoor wedding I was in, suit, three piece, golf course. And I'm telling
yeah,
you, I sweat out my suit. I was like, this is uncomfortable because we're on the golf course. It's humid outside. We're in Canada.
yeah,
We're in Toronto. I'm sitting here can this speed up any quicker? Like, I need water. I need a fan. You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah.
It got
It's
to a
one thing
point
if
where I
you're
was
on the
just,
dance. Yeah, it's one thing you later on when you're on the dance floor and you're still wearing your suit and you're cooling yourself off with spilled whiskey sours or something. But this is this is a different story. So don't go too long. That obviously don't go too short. Don't go too long. Talk to your partner about what what the number should be, whether it's 2 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever it is. I mean, we recommend 1 to 2 minutes. It's plenty of time to do it. And then the other thing is don't say anything that will do harm. And this is true for the whole thing, right? Don't ever embarrass somebody. Only talk about things that are going to make people laugh, but not make the other person feel uncomfortable, right? And also just don't maybe overexpose yourself. Like I had a client that wanted to talk about how good him and his wife were in the bedroom, right? And that's like not for grandma, right? Maybe not for grandma, maybe not for your wife's boss to listen to or whatever it is. Like it's just some things you just don't want to talk about on stage in front of everybody.
I'm laughing because it's like I imagine the young children that are there, and they're probably looking around. They're looking at their mom and their dad, and you got to just take
Yeah,
your hands and put them over their ears because you're like,
yeah.
"What? Wait, what are we
I
doing?" You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. He
and it's like
he
TMI
also
because, like,
go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead. No, no, go, go.
He also sorry. He also wanted to talk about how he proposed after a vigorous lovemaking session, and and they were naked. He didn't even have a ring. He just got down on one knee, and he painted the entire visual for me. And I was like, yeah, I just don't think we need to say that, right? That's not a crucial
Right?
part of this, but
It's not. It's
pretty
not.
funny.
Right? No, because I'm thinking about it. It's like why would you want to welcome that and just have everyone hearing it? Like, and your
Yeah,
your wife to be sitting here right now looking at you like, what are you
yeah.
doing?
It's like
You know
it's
what I
her
mean?
special day too, right? But I can also understand the instinct because I guess you get to a certain level of age and success, and there's that bravery that comes from not worrying about things too much, and you just think it's a funny story, and so what am I going to offend anybody? Who cares? But it's not about really even offending people. It's about respecting the importance of the moment. And
No,
I
for
think
sure.
that's the one thing that I have to do when I'm talking to people is just make sure that we're not taking chances on uh, ris- disrespecting the dignity of the moment.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the humor side. Like, walk
Yeah.
us through. Walk us through. Walk the audience through of
Well,
like
yeah.
adding humor to the conversation and bringing it to life and
Yeah. Well, anybody that's in a relationship, married or not, has humor if it's a good relationship. it, there are things that make you laugh. They're not necessarily like joke a minute kinds of things. They're just things that make you laugh. Stupid things that you do, mistakes that you make, weird patterns, whatever it is. Just being funny or quirky, and it makes people laugh, and you laugh with your partner. That's what you do, at least some of the time. And I think if you don't bring that part of your relationship into your vows, into your ceremony, then you're not really doing it justice. So not everybody's a comedian. I'm someone I've been writing dumb jokes most of my most of my life. And so I'm not a stand-up comedian in any way, but I think I know a good joke. And so my job in part is to get them to express what those things are and help them articulate it in a funny way. So, for example, like if uh, if you're someone that it might be, I don't know, dating a nerd, right? You might say in your vows, "Did I know that I was going into a relationship with someone that has a large cabinet of Dragon Ball Z figurines and Star Wars posters? No, but I oversaw that to the person that is cool who knows all the good indie rock, and something like that. It doesn't have to be a big joke. It's just something that offsets the heaviness of the emotion that, when you're saying, "Oh my God, I love you so much." That's a lot. And if you do that for 2 minutes, that's a lot without a break.
no, no, for sure. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with having a nerd side. just to build into
Oh,
the
I am not.
conversation.
Trust me, I've got a hardcore nerd side in me too. So
Well,
it's
listen. We're here.
yeah,
Okay, so let me ask you, Brian.
yeah.
What is your nerd side? You tell me, and I'll tell you what my nerd side is.
Okay, I'm really big into astronomy. I'm the guy
Nothing
that
wrong with
like,
that.
I live out here. I live out here in LA, and anytime the SpaceX rockets go off, you can see them from our balcony. And so I'm the first guy to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to watch those things go off, and and know the telemetry of it. Even though I'm bad at math, uh, I love science fiction. I've read a ton of science fiction in my life. I don't know. That's that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you're like a Star
I'm a
Wars guy or more
multifaceted.
Star Trek?
I'm both really, but I'm probably leaning more Star Trek. Yeah,
Okay. Interesting.
probably.
I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
about them
I'm not. Although
Trekkies.
not a Trek, not to the point I've never been to like a convention, right?
Oh,
But
okay. Fair.
you know,
Fair.
but I did read
Fair.
Sulu's book, so there you go.
Okay, okay. See, for me, I don't know if I want to call this a nerd side. It'd be pro wrestling. I'm still a pro wrestling guy. Still
Yeah,
watch
that's
wrestling.
awesome.
Still
You
watch
know,
wrestling.
when I was a kid, I didn't really. I mean, I watched it, but I wasn't like the people that got into it. But I watched some of the documentaries more recently, and it just made me want to go backwards. And the one about Ric Flair and was so amazing. That was, I mean, I almost cried in that one. And then the one about Vince McMahon was amazing too on Netflix. That was great.
Yeah, that one I've lost. That one I've lost touch of. I a lot of folks that I know that didn't even watch pro wrestling have told me, "How have you not watched
Yeah,
that one with the Vince McMahon documentary?" I was like, "Listen, there's not enough hours in a day. You know how much stuff I got to
yeah.
do? I got to create
No,
podcasts. I got to work. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to have great interviews like this. You know what I mean with
yeah,
yourself." And I think that what we're just trying to say is that we all have some sort of like thing that we do, right? For me,
right.
it's always gonna be pro wrestling. I like my sports. I do a little bit of gaming here and there, but it's like it's what makes us human. There's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that. So it's like,
And how you both react to that is really important. There are some people, gaming can break up relationships, but it can also bring people together.
oh, for
And
sure.
I, um, I had one couple who, the wife to be was not really a big fan of the level of gaming that was going on. But she then decided that let's find a game that we both can play together sometimes, that will bring us that we both like that we can do together as an activity. And that's wonderful provided that the other person isn't just gaming to run away from them. But yeah, that's the idea. And you find those things that bring you together, you find those things that make you laugh, and talking about them. And even if you've already been married, I think it's helpful to reflect on these things.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'll build even on that a little bit more. When over here in Toronto, the last wrestling pay per view, Elimination Chamber, I had a chance to go. And the crazy thing about it is, it's wild how many couples I saw. And I think a lot of people would be like, well, wait, women watch wrestling too? And I'm like, yeah, you'd be surprised. There's a
Hmm.
big, like, a group of women that watch it. But you don't see women necessarily like with their other girlfriends. It's a man and a woman. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, well, most likely they're in some sort of maybe relationship, or maybe it's a friendship, whatever it needs to be. And the group that was sitting behind me, I could overhear a lot of their conversation because they were talking, they were dating and stuff like that. And
yeah.
she's getting right into it. As somebody's coming out, there's a move happening. She's calling out the move. She's calling the spot. And I'm
Yeah,
like, okay.
that's what's
I give you,
happening.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what's happening with F1, right?
Hmm.
In my family and a lot of our friends, I was a race fan. I got back into F1 after years of not being in it, and then I got my wife to watch Drive to Survive on Netflix, the F1 documentary or docu series, and she got into the first season and then she was hooked. Right now she's got her favorite drivers and she's got she's following the whole thing, and we watch everything. Like we literally get up 6 o'clock in the morning to go watch this whatever Grand Prix qualifying there might be on a Saturday. So so it's stuff like that makes each relationship unique, or at least gives it some color that your friends don't know about, or things that
Absolutely.
you can talk about.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's that compromising aspect too. You know what I mean? And I feel like when you're dating someone and it's you're communicating and you're building in that ecosystem, you tend to have likes and dislikes, and then you
Hmm.
compromise. Heck, you know
Hmm.
what? I may not like video games, but you know what? I support what you're doing as long as it's not over consuming the relationship. You may like basketball, and guess what? I may buy you tickets for a birthday or our anniversary or something. You see that happen a lot of times. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
movie guy, and I'm the type of
Yeah.
person, like, you date me and there's movies that are out, it's like every weekend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're going to
Yeah.
movies, we're figuring it out because it brings that sense of togetherness. You do dinner, you do snacks, you do the
Yeah.
popcorn. It is what it is. And you make your time of, like, that's where that connection in dating is. And I feel like, not to call anybody out, but I feel a lot of folks don't want to date their person anymore. It doesn't matter if you're married or in a long term committed relationship, is going back and dating that person. You know what I mean? And,
Hmm.
and all that good stuff for sure.
One of the things that I tell people to do now is take their vows, if they've written vows, and quite ironically, we did not do our own vows in on my own marriage. We that preceded the business, but the reason was that my wife felt outmatched as a writer. It's one of the reasons we have a company is that one person was felt confident and was a good writer, and the other one didn't, and she didn't even mention it because she didn't want to have to try and compete against someone that was a professional writer. She's a fine writer. She's my co founder in this business, but the thing is that people get uncomfortable. But I wish we had done this, but maybe for our vow renewal, like our vow renewal someday. But you should put it on your wall, print them out, write them out if you have them, however you want. Go get a calligrapher to do it, but put it on your wall. And then when invariably there will be bad days, and you guys have a fight or you're just struggling or whatever it might be, then look at the wall. Go remind yourself about the things that you love about that other person, and see again the things that they love about you. And I think that will bring you back to those moments, like when you were dating and you went to the movies, or remind you that this is something that you both have to go back and put some effort into to try and remember those things that you love, as opposed to the things that are driving you crazy at that moment.
Absolutely. That message is deep because I feel like a lot of folks in relationships don't ever go back to that. And I get it. There's not every day it's going to be all smiles. There's going to be
Yeah.
internal pressures that you're dealing with, internal pressures that I'm dealing with, your wife, your girlfriend at the time. And it's sometimes where it's like, if they're dealing with whatever they're dealing with, you got to come in and you got to be able to pick them up. But then vice
Yeah.
versa, it's the same thing. It can't just be, well, if you're upset and you feel this way, you need to stop feeling this way and figuring it out. And that's why I said
Some
communication is the biggest thing.
and some
Communication, like,
marriages, yeah, some marriages aren't built to last. I mean that's just the bottom line. Sometimes people are going in two different directions, where they got married at a point in time where they weren't sure about what they wanted in life, and now what they want is inconsistent with who they're with. And that's not always a solvable problem. I mean, sometimes divorce needs to happen. I got remarried. I mean, I don't think that people should be shamed about divorce, because divorce, whether it was your choice or not, sometimes is the best thing for you. But at the same time, if you both want to work it out but just don't know how, there are ways, but both of you have to be willing to do that. And you can't always get there, but with the right efforts and perhaps the right counseling, that can happen. uh but I think part of that is, like you said, it's communication, it's intent, it's shared intent. I mean, if you think about what marriage is to begin with, marriage is shared intent, right? It's not, you can vow all day long, but what you're saying is, I'm really going to try my best to do this stuff, right? And but circumstances can change. We know that. So, are you battle tested? I mean, really? You know, what happens when things are really hard? Are you guys going to be, having each other's back, and or can you learn to? And so I think those are the things that later on you still have to have that same intent. You just still have to renew that intent. And I like vow renewal. I don't know why I can't say that those two words together. Vow
It's all good.
renewals. Yeah, this is why you have to practice what you're saying with in respect to the vows, because some things are just they just need muscle memory. You just need to practice the steps, and sometimes your lips just have to work a certain way together, and it takes a while. Vow renewal. I am a big fan of vow renewal, and because it's a renewal of the intent, and it brings you right back to that idea, just from a different point in time.
Love that you say that. You spoke about writing, right? And I feel like now we have the overuse of Chat GPT, DeepSeek, AI, all of this stuff.
Hmm.
Yes or no to writing your vows through Chat
No.
GPT or DeepSeek?
Well, no. Okay, I mean, the answer is no. And not even Gemini on Google. Uh, and the reason I think no is that you are not going to have the same experience as you will being interviewed, talking to a human being. Now, not everybody can afford to get help, but if you can't, I guarantee you know somebody in your sphere of friends that is a good writer, that is good at humor, or makes you laugh, and that just knows the timing of those kinds of things. That has a good, appropriate sense of humor or sense for these things. And you should get help. You should get help making it more personal. I think this is a human moment, and I think it's your moment. And the problem with ChatGPT is, by definition, they're pulling from everybody else's thing and coming up with the generic standard answer, which you can customize, and it can learn your voice and all that other stuff. Yes, but the real value is the interview. It really is. I mean, that's where I get to go. Hold on a second. Tell me more about what you're saying. That's where the story is, right? Give me more insight into how this works. And keep like one of the questions is how do they make you feel, right? That's a standard question. I always save it for last because we've already talked for an hour and they're just like having so much fun, and then and they're getting emotional about other things, and so they're already a little bit keyed up, and then I hit them with that question as the last question, and they're like, oh, like they just starts to come out of them. But sometimes I need to say, keep going, right? Keep going, like let's get some more, be a little bit more expressive. And then they keep going, and that's where the gold is sometimes. ChatGPT doesn't do that. It doesn't ask you follow-up questions. It's not going to tell you what not to say. That's the other thing. We're going back to some of our, bad stories, and we haven't even gotten to some of the speech stories. But it's not going to tell you what not to say. And I think a lot of it requires you to input information, and you might, in writing, where you're not really a great writer to begin with, or maybe you just don't know how to answer that yet, and you need to, and it's not going to come around and ask you again later on. So I think that's some of the thing. But it's, like, you want to talk to a robot, that's fine. It's great for sales copy. It's great for brainstorming. I use it all the time with other things, but not with this.
No, and that's well said. Because I feel like so many folks that are wanting to get into the book writing are using Chat GPT to write the whole entire book. But realistic, you're supposed to use Chat GPT to write the structure of the book. There's a difference, right? Writing the book and then publishing it, that's not necessarily your own words. But how do I structure my book to flow, right? I think is the best way, and I think that's where people miss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you writing a book right now?
Maybe something might be coming soon.
I am writing a book based on the things that I've learned in these interviews, and I'm going through all of the interviews that I've done, one by one, to try and find those little moments of the best stories about how they got through something together, or the best lessons that you can glean from the amalgamation of all of them. And I'm not using ChatGPT to write it. I'm looking at it from the perspective that if I was just interested in this subject, and I was interested in relationship how-to books, like, what would be fun to read, right? How would that be fun to me? as an ADD uh, uh, person who reads a lot, but doesn't always finish things. Right? And so I want, so would I, how would I approach this in a way that would capture someone like me, and keep them in? And so that I don't know if ChatGPT would know how to do that. Maybe it would. And I'm sure there are experts out there that would say yes, but I just don't. I don't know. There's something about it. There's
Right?
a
No, I
creepy
hear you.
factor.
Well, I feel like if you're using it for productivity, it speeds up productivity.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
And things like that, but I feel like with that,
SEO is great. Yeah.
SEO, all of that, like,
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you this right now, it's a big thing, AI, for even writing out your titles when you're creating podcasts, and
absolutely.
structuring, like, optimization for, is this video that I post going to pop? Because if it doesn't pop, then it's like, what did I do it for? But you got to build, it is what it is, and things
Yeah.
like that with ideation of tools.
Well, I was going to ask, like, at some point when everybody's using AI the same way, then it kind of levels everybody out too, right? I mean, if everybody's using it to pop the way that AI says to pop, and everybody's enhancing it the way that it says to enhance the photo, then the next step of that is, all right, who's going to be different than that, right? And who's going to go off script here? And I think that's, as someone that I was never a true punk rocker, but I kind of like it. I've always tried to lean into it a little, and that's where I think that's good. That's where you're going to see some really incredible things happen. Creativity that that is not that is the anti AI essentially.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, it's like it's a good tool, just a good
Hmm.
tool to just use, but not for everything,
Yeah,
because that's where things just become just absolutely ludicrous and whatnot. You did speak in that little part about, you said about the speeches and like tailoring it, the speech. I forget exactly what it was, but when we talk about breaking everything down, and you may not have a lot of confidence, and we're confident people, we're sitting here, this is what we're having a podcast, right? We may not have the ability to have that public speaking ability. What's the first two steps that you give as tools to that man or to that woman to help them
yeah.
navigate that nervousness?
Well, the steps are different if you're just a nervous person in this regard. I think everybody, I'd say, I think the number is like 74, 75% of people have some level of public speaking anxiety. If you gave me this moment, I would have it. I would have anxiety about it. I would be working like a crazy on it, like over the top, because in part because I think the expectations are going to be high, but because of what I do, but also because I just want to nail the moment. I think everybody wants to nail the moment, and that's what kind of shuts them down. So there's two steps to this. There's be really, really happy with the content, and there's practice it like crazy, out loud. Time it, make sure you're on time, okay, because they're going to give you 3 to 4 minutes usually. You don't want to go past that because you're going to ruin the food service, which happens all the time, sometimes disastrously. You don't want to do any harm, right? If you're giving a speech, that's the other thing. You're doing this as a gift to both of the couple, all right? It's not a confessional. It's not where you get to say, well, I don't really like, him. Okay, it's a time where you're respecting and giving admiration to their love for each other for whatever reasons that occurs, and happiness at their happiness in this moment. And so I think those are the kind of guardrails for it. But if you're nervous, the number one thing is be happy with the content, work with somebody to get that feedback so that you feel more confident in it, and then say it over and over and over again, preferably with someone that knows how to do public speaking, so that we can say to you, hey, you're going too fast, or hey, you're speaking this in a tone that doesn't really deviate that much, and yet you're telling jokes. When you're telling a joke, lift your voice a little bit, right? Lift your tone a little bit. You don't have to do it louder. Just lift up a little bit, put a little bit more energy into it. And then when you're saying something really meaningful and deep and loving, then maybe get a little closer to the mic and say it a little slower, and say, let the emotion come through your voice. You're telling them how much you love them as a daughter or a best friend. Tell them for real. And the only way that you can concentrate on that part of it is if you're not reading it word by word by word by word, which is what happens when you haven't practiced it.
Well said. What made you want to pursue this? Out of curiosity.
I was doing the same basic work but in politics, and I hated it.
Really?
Yeah, I was a political
Okay.
consultant. I was a political consultant. I was running campaigns. I was running advertising for campaigns. My wife and I have been doing this for a long time. And there got to be a certain point where um, I just got really, really sick to my stomach with what was going on and how we were dividing each other. And you do it for good reasons. I mean, everybody on each side mostly believes in their side because they think their side's the right side, and they're trying to win and promote that reasoning for whatever purpose. But at some point, you just go, like, I've known you for all my life, and we can't even talk anymore? Like, what's that? Now I'm a traitor? Whatever. I mean, whatever the deal is. And, you know, and at some point it got so bad that I just started to try and get out of it. And it took me like 5 years to find something. That I tried a couple different things that were adjacent to what I was doing, but not that. And it took me, some time to find something that was like, oh yeah, that's it. That's the thing. And when I started talking to people and I looked around the wedding industry, and this was an area that just wasn't offered to couples by and large. There were some people that were trying to do it and were doing it at a very low level, in terms of the industry knowledge. And and then I looked at all the weddings that are happening every day in this country. Like, there's 2.5 million weddings a year just in the United States alone, and each one of those weddings has usually like 3 to 4 speeches and vows, and you do the math, and it's like there's a lot of need out there. There's a lot of need out there, and this is a big important part of the wedding that we can give guidance to. And that was the entrepreneur in me was like, okay, I gotta go do this. It is much more. It's difficult to go into an industry that you've never been in and understand it right away, right? And understand the dynamics and the relationships and all that, and how things work. And just because you understand advertising and politics doesn't mean you can jump into this kind of stuff and know what the messaging should be or know who to go to. And that took a few years, but I think that's common. I think when you start a business, it takes 3 or 4 years just to understand the landscape.
Absolutely. No, it's so true. It's so true. Because I think that's with and I can echo that with anything. I sit back and I think about podcasting, 8 years of doing this,
Mm-hmm.
grinding, and then doing the whole video capabilities of it. It would have been 2021. A guest came on. She goes, if you don't turn your camera on, I'm not doing the podcast. I was like, okay, like, all right, whatever. And she goes, no, turn your camera on. And ever since, turned my camera on. Now you think about it, I was working all those for the 8 years in total, but 22, 23, 24, 25. I'm technically 3.5, 4 years doing this on video, now positioning it, putting it in YouTube for the last 3. You
Yeah,
see what I'm saying?
I
So it's
do.
like you ebbs and you flow with everything as it's going. And as you go and as you climb the ranks, that's when you start seeing the results pay off. So I get what you mean, my friend.
Yeah,
It's in
and
any
I've done my
ecosystem.
own podcast, talking about wedding speech disaster stories and that kind of thing. And we haven't done video in part because up until recently, I didn't feel like a competent enough video editor to, there's times where you reset the whole thing and something happens that, something gets knocked over, you want to start over and so just being able to do that now, it's so much easier. AI has made that very easy, actually. And so, now I'm going to start doing that, but it's just, I hadn't done it because I knew how to edit audio, but not video that well. So it makes sense.
I got some tips for you. Off
All
air,
right. Okay, great.
and things like that. No, because you pay
Yeah.
it forward and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: is this, and this is what I love about what I do, because this is going to be the full shebang. It's going to be the full time. You got to sometimes claw in one area of the 9 to 5, and then transition out. And that's
Hmm.
it's no secret now. You know what I mean? And the more energy you keep putting out, that's that where that energy starts receiving, and the
Absolutely.
universe starts aligning with the purposes and things like that. I think one of the things I would say to you before we get out of here is overcoming adversity. That's my thing, right? I always ask my guests in particular
Yeah.
episodes, what did that mean for you? And when was there a time that you had to overcome that adversity to become the
Oh, it's
person that you are
recently.
today?
Yeah. No, recently. I started this business in 2021, and we were still working in politics, obviously. We didn't just jump into it full time. And it was starting to move, starting to get the hang of it, I would say early 22. And that year I was, just getting out there, meeting people, but I was still doing work in politics. And then as I started full time in this in 2023, or towards the end of 2022, my wife got breast cancer, and thankful she caught it early. We were able to get rid of it fairly quickly, but she still had to have surgery and radiation and whatnot. It was a big ordeal. And then she finished radiation in March, still recovering. And in June, my best friend died. Our best friend died, and suddenly, and that wrecked me in a way that he was the second close friend of mine to die in 5 years, and but this one wrecked me in a way that I had a lot of trouble coming back from. I would sit at my desk and just not be able to do anything, and just not, just try not to cry. And so, as between the cancer and that and some other bad luck, just things breaking down that you couldn't really afford at that moment because you just put all your money into this business, and like, things like that. It was that was a tough year. We didn't get a whole lot done in 23. And then we spent all of 24 just trying to claw back from it. And it wasn't until like midway last year that I figured out like what we needed to do for this business, and then we were up 200%, like almost immediately, thanks to some good advice and some of the relationships you build and whatnot. But you just keep grinding because you believe, I had decided that this is my thing that I'm going to do. And this is, like, I'm going to not stop it. This is my last job. Like, I'm looking at it like that.
Mm.
And so, there's no home runs without big swings, right? But, life swings at you too sometimes. And you have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive the failures or the inabilities to be um, effective at different moments because somebody died or because somebody's sick or whatever it might be, or you're injured, and accept that you didn't do as well as you could have if that didn't happen, but it did, and you have to keep going. And by having that mentality, by not giving up, we're now seeing this thing really move and take off, and we are still digging our way out from the wreckage, but it and there are times where you go, did I make the right call? Because it's scary. But there's nothing that'll alleviate your fears more than faith. And I mean faith in yourself and in what you're doing, and a belief, a wholehearted belief that this is your path. And if you do that, then you will, like you said earlier, the universe responds to that. And you also come through things together or by yourself in a way that that's very enabling. Like, that this is today's challenge is something that you're going to get through because you've been through worse. And uh and I think that's why a lot of people that come from meager beginnings or have been through these kinds of moments, they're the best at what they do because they know how to manage that stuff. and they know how to manage tomorrow in a way that maybe you don't because you've never been through that. And
Mm.
so that's, I don't want to overstate that because look, I mean, some of the next thing could knock me sideways, but I definitely think I'm going to be better at it than I would have been if none of this had happened. And I'm more determined than ever to keep going.
I love that you said that because every part of what you said speaks to parts of my journey in just life in itself, going through the passing of a best friend, going through the love of just what it is you do. And then there's those blocks in the road that you have to just overcome. You know what I mean? And I feel like once you are aligned and one with self, you
Yeah.
start appreciating what it is you do, but then you realize from a center of groundness, sorry, is that you always have to seek inward, right? And understand, well, heck, the universe is throwing me this or God's throwing me that. Let it not confuse me or frustrate me. Yes, there's heartbreak, but it's always you got to be able to pick yourself back up and just build again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Mm.
that's the a lot of people are going through that right now, right? A lot of people getting laid off, a lot of people worried about getting laid off. There's fear out there, and some of the things that are happening are not in their control. But uh, it's their ability to figure out how to manage whatever comes that matters, and get and ask for help and get the help that they need. This a lot of this came with some therapy and some some friends and family paying attention, and the forgiveness of my wife to understand that the stress that she's under now to do X, Y, or Z is is because of all of this stuff happening, and just being forgiving to each other, that those moments aren't always nice moments, but they're ones that we have to deal with and go through before we can get on the other side, and we trust each other that way. So I think that part of it as well is like that understanding of somebody that's going through it. If they're struggling, then just not coming down as hard, but to give them the help and lift them up to be able to
No,
do
no,
these things.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For sure, for sure. My friend, plug all your information. Where can everyone check you out? All that good stuff.
That
Instagram,
sure.
website, all of that.
Yes.
Go.
Website and Instagram, vowsandspeeches.com. That's VOWSAND speeches, SPEECHES.com. Same thing on Instagram. We're Vows and Speeches. My name is Brian, and my information is on my website, and you can find me very easily. And please reach out if you have any questions about how to say what's in your heart and say it the right way and get up there and feel really good about it, and we'll make it moving and fun.
I love that, man. I love that. Listen, friend of mine, friend of mine. Let's network. Let's continue to keep building this
Yes,
thing
sir.
together
Yes,
because
sir.
this is what we need. We need that. We need that connection. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And you're stronger together. That's the most important thing. So I appreciate you, my brother.
Thank you for having me.